As Leeds goes up in flames and Whitechapel erupts in riots over some squabble in Bangladesh between rival factions right here in Britain, not Bangladesh. Let's not forget our cherished mantra. Be reminded, take heart. Diversity is our strength. Multiculturalism is a smashing success. The far right is the real problem. And of course, we have always been at war with East Asia. Yesterday in Whitechapel, London, riots broke out because Bangladeshi students were killed in not Britain, but Bangladesh. Reports suggest it took place outside an office linked to a political party in Bangladesh. There were even said to be scuffles today, with a battalion of the Metropolitan Police drafted in to deal with those concerned, not with Britain, but with Bangladesh. We then, of course, travel up to Leeds, Harehills to be precise, viewed by locals as a no-go zone. Once the proud men of Leeds would have fought in 2 world wars to keep Britons free. Today, the only wars these recent arrivals are interested in are those in Gaza or of Roma community disputes. It all started after social services intervened due to identified safeguarding concerns, and they removed children from a Roma household nestled inside Harehills. The social services had a call and they had to actually get involved and require police reinforcement in the form, of course, of West Yorkshire Police. Now, the West Yorkshire Police retrieved the children but lost a patrol car, which was vandalised and ultimately wrecked, turning it on its side. You had kids smashing the windows of this police car. They're raising them right up there. The first tranche of coppers quickly realised they couldn't take on the task as the crowd started to gather in increasingly larger numbers. There was a large Muslim contingent wanting a slice of the action, nothing to do with the Romas. The police were forced to make their first embarrassing retreat of the night. Now, after the police had left, riots took to the surrounding streets, building a bonfire on one of the nearby roads, throwing sofas upon it and anything that they could get their hands on to actually keep the flames alive. The police, this time in riot vans and riot gear, emerged again. They marched some of the crowds backwards for all of 2 minutes. They were met by bricks, by bottles. At the other side of the road, as the police stood surrounding this fire that had been lit, they were actually met by men digging up the taxpayer-funded road using the removed pavement slabs to actually lob at the police. Now, the police quickly made their second exit for the night, deciding it was too much to bear. Now, I would just say at this point, I really struggle to accept that the police wouldn't intervene more robustly had it been a Leeds United football match that had blown up in this way, or a group of the so-called far right gathering in Leeds. But when it's Muslims acting like the inhabitants of the third world, well, we mustn't apply the law, you see, because we might be accused of racism. Let's not forget, this is the same part of the world in which the Batley Grammar School, for showing a Mohammed cartoon, has been in hiding for over 3 years. There was then a bus brazenly lit on fire, despite the piercing glare of smartphones going live on TikTok for all of their followers and glory among the chaos by their so-called communities. But they loved it, they lapped it up. Up in flames goes this bus. There's not a single police officer in sight. They don't return for hours and hours yet. And the flames continue to be fed. It could have set fire to buildings nearby. The crowds are gathering and gathering and gathering. I was watching the streams, going through it all to make sure I found the facts. I even heard the cries of Free Palestine, the war cry of Britain's new sectarianism. Now, I fail to see what any of that has to do with the safeguarding risk of a Roma child. Hope Not Hate quickly popped out their propaganda machine to argue that the horrible English white people are just as bad. Nick Lawles of the ironically named Hate Mongers said on Sunday night after the England game that there was disorder. I ask you this, my friends. Do you remember on Sunday night, England fans intimidating social services, safeguarding a kid? Do you remember England fans exploding a bus? Do you remember England fans starting a bonfire on a road? Do you remember England fans digging up the pavement to throw it at the police? Do you remember England fans causing coppers to evacuate not once, but twice? Do you remember England fans screaming for free Palestine? Because I certainly don't. And here's the kicker. What we've done in Britain is import, for the first time since the Norman conquest, societies which are self-enclosed, self-contained. They've got their own doctrines, they've got their Qurans, they've got their rules, they're resistant to absolutely anything that isn't their own. The fundamental problem here is that these are societies uniquely distinct and separate within Britain. They marry their cousins back home, they bring them here, and the cycle repeats itself. New generations of being absolutely resolutely and determinedly foreign begins anew. And we have to, I think, in this country, ban anyone that has arranged marriage within the family coming to Britain. I would also ban face coverings, to be perfectly honest. Not only does it cause the problems I've mentioned for our society, it also creates real issues for the children. Burdens upon the NHS and, of course, for Britain's benefits bill if you have a poor child that's been born out of the family. They see themselves, these people, as independent, as self-contained. They have their own languages, their own customs, and we've decided they are even allowed to keep them. And even then, we'll help them do it using your own money. I mentioned Whitechapel earlier. This is Whitechapel. Look at that. Do you recognise that? Is that English to you? Could you read that out? I certainly can't. And the problem is, they can't. And just look at the way they treat their women. They call for jihad and intifada on our streets. They raise their children and the avoidance of education in certain respects. They wear at Islamist festivals that close off the streets of London the green headband of Hamas. This is going to spiral on and grow worse and worse as it passes down from generation after generation that expands and expands in pure population terms. Now, the Trump vice president nominee, J.D. Vance, he was heavily criticised for bringing up a comment about the Islamification of Britain.
By the way, I have to beat up on the UK just one additional thing. I was talking with a friend recently, and we were talking about, one of the big dangers in the world, of course, is nuclear proliferation, though, of course, the Biden administration doesn't care about it. And I was talking about, what is the first truly Islamist country that will get a nuclear weapon? And we were like, maybe it's Iran, maybe Pakistan already kind of counts. And then we sort of finally decided maybe it's actually the UK, since Labour just took over.
But I'm sorry, it's quite clear to me that we have, from Blair to Brown to Cameron to May to Boris to Lays to Sunak, and undoubtedly to Starmer, I'll tell you that much for free, we've allowed this completely foreign, dangerous and uncontainable system to be established here. You can go to certain parts of Britain and name villages in Pakistan and Bangladesh where the people have come from with accuracy. Is that a real sign of integration and a prospering multicultural success story? Last night in Britain was and is the price of British multiculturalism. Now, I say all of this as I really fear for my country. I can't for the life of me understand why anyone thought a melting pot, more like a volcanic lava if you ask me, of incompatible cultures being forced together would ever end well. And if you think that the Labour Party gets this and is the answer to this, well, you dream on. The boats won't stop, the high levels of immigration won't stop, and the deportations won't start. Strap yourself in, because we're in for one hell of a ride. So as I've expressed there, the situation is utterly dire. It's intolerable. I don't doubt that you don't share my concerns on that. It's really easy to feel disheartened, isn't it? And to think about giving up and seeking refuge, elsewhere. But that's not the spirit that built our nation. And it's not the path I think we should take. That's not what our ancestors did. If they had, we wouldn't be here. Great Britain hasn't fallen, and neither have we. Among us is a generation of incredibly talented individuals, many of them young and passionate. Some were championed on this very channel, a little shameless plug, who are committed to actually restoring a Britain once more we can actually be proud of. And when the time is right, change will come, and it's going to come more swiftly and powerfully than you think. Just look at the numbers of young people back in Reform UK. They get it. They see it happening. And their desperation for change, I reckon, is only going to grow. Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.